Hi everybody, my name is John Gould. I'm from Tampa, Florida, and I work as a communications specialist for NASA. Part of what I do every day is help to communicate and tell the story and explain the activities that we're up to at NASA. I work specifically for the Aeronautics Research Mission Directorate, but today I want to talk a little bit about a NASA story that has affected me personally and is continuously inspiring me and inspiring many people to do what we do. And that is the story of Apollo 8. So we all know that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were the first two people to walk on the moon, and they did so as part of the Apollo 11 mission in 1969. But the year before, in 1968, which is now 53 years ago, was a mission called Apollo 8. It was 3 missions before, and their job was to go to the moon, but not land on the moon. It was a crew of 3. It was commanded by Frank Borman, and alongside him were Jim Lovell and Bill Anders. So, if they weren't going to land on the moon, why did they go to the moon? Well, the primary focus of the mission was to test the command module, which was the primary Apollo vehicle in cislunar space, which means in between the Earth and the moon, and at the moon itself, to see if it was possible to go to the moon and orbit the moon and come back and test our theories. The other reason, which is a bit more famous, was to beat the Soviet Union. There were rumors the Soviets were going to send people to the moon and not land on the moon. And if they did that before we sent people to the moon, well, some could argue that meant that the Soviets got there first. So the United States said, all right, it's time to send people to the moon. Part of what Apollo 8 did at the moon that was so extraordinary was not only to visit the moon, but also to get a new perspective on Earth with this photograph, Earthrise, which was taken by astronaut Bill Anders from the moon in December 1968. Now, this image is iconic. Some of you may have seen it before, and it's one of the more, I would say, important pictures ever taken in history, because it was the first time that humans ever saw the full circle of the Earth. I have here a globe. Now, let's see. We can find the UK and Europe, North America, and if we go to the other side, we can even see Argentina, Antarctica, there's Africa, Australia. But who were the first people to see what we're seeing, this entire globe all at once? Up until Apollo 8, space missions orbited the Earth, just like they do now, and like Tim Peake does on the ISS. They just go around and around and around. They don't ever get far enough away to see this whole circle. With Apollo 8 being the first mission to leave Earth's orbit and to see that whole circle of the Earth, the crew on board, Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and Bill Anders, would have a view that no other humans have had before. But how far away is the moon, and how small was the Earth in the sky? I have a model here of the Earth, which is a little smaller than the globe in the background, and I also have a model representing the moon. Now, these are to scale. That means compared to each other, this is how big the planets are, how big Earth and the moon are when they're next door to each other. But how far apart are they? Are they this far, that far? A little bit further than this. In fact, these two models need to be 130 centimeters or 50 inches apart to represent the true to-scale distance between the Earth and the moon. And that just so happens to be about the length of my desk. Hi everybody, my name is John Gould. I'm from Tampa, Florida, and I work as a communications specialist for NASA. Part of what I do every day is help to communicate and tell the story and explain the activities that we're. So now the brave astronauts in our story are out at the moon, and they're in their spaceship orbiting around very close to the planet's surface. And they're taking pictures, seeing things that no humans have ever seen before because they were the first ones to be there. But what they didn't expect was to fly around the edge of the moon and see the Earth rise over the horizon, just like the sun rises or the moon rises here on Earth. A tiny Earth just slowly rising above the horizon not much bigger than how small the moon looks from here, actually. Was immediately shocking to astronaut Bill Anders, who exclaimed, "Oh, wow, look at that!" and began scrambling to find a color film roll, because they were using film, and in the camera at that moment was a black and white roll, and he wanted to get the colors, the blue and the white and the green of planet Earth. So he finally found one, and then took the image that would change the world. You can't be said better than the man who took the picture himself. He said, "We came all this way to explore the moon, but the most important thing is that we discovered the Earth." Jim Lovell, who's the astronaut that was right beside him when he took the picture, said, "The fact that just from the distance of the moon, you can put your thumb up and you can hide the Earth behind your thumb. Everything that you've ever known, your loved ones, your business, the problems of the Earth itself, all behind your thumb." Frank Borman, who was flying the spacecraft at the time, noted that from the distance of the moon, the sobering experience of not being able to see any of man's familiar works, cities, highways, no visual evidence they even existed. Now, this is a humbling view of our planet, that once you get far enough away, you can't see cities, you can't see borders, you can't see highways. All you see is that beautiful gem of Earth floating in the deep blackness of space, and how insignificant it seems compared to the rest of the universe and all of its grandness. But the image also, on the other hand, brings out how extraordinary Earth is, that it's a place where there's life and where there's warmth, color, water, clouds, grass, and people. These feelings and ideas and thoughts that in part were inspired by this image of seeing our little Earth just that big floating in the sky, helped give rise to the environmental movement and becoming aware of things like climate change and how our everyday actions can harm planet Earth and can, in the future, harm ourselves. And that Earth is one place here in Lost in Space, and if we destroy Earth, then we don't have anywhere else to go. And that is such a positive impact. And if we did Apollo for anything, that is a really good reason why. We knew beforehand, we knew that the Earth was round. We knew that it was very small compared to space. We knew that the moon was out there and it had mysteries, but it took humans, it took people actually going for these feelings to come across in a really powerful way. And that's the power of STEM, of science and technology and engineering and math and art. These are tools that allow us to discover things, to discover perspective, like how big Earth is, to discover how we're harming ourselves with things like climate change, and to find a way to make life better for people. Now, we've all heard of Virgin Galactic, Richard Branson. We've heard of Blue Origin and Jeff Bezos and the idea of space tourism, that people like you and like me who aren't trained astronauts may someday go to space as tourists or visitors. And if enough people do that, it would be a wonderful thing, because we would all get to experience a little bit of what Apollo astronauts experienced when they saw the full circle of the Earth. So let's hear a little bit more of that from them, of these 24 people who went out to the moon. Gene Cernan, who walked on the moon on Apollo 17, said, "When you leave Earth orbit, you can see from pole to pole, ocean to ocean." And he said, "I had to stop and ask myself, do you really know where you are in space and time and history?" Jim Irwin, who was on Apollo 15, said, when he was standing on the moon, "When you lean back far and look up, you can see the Earth like a beautiful, fragile Christmas tree ornament hanging against the blackness of space. It's as if you could reach out and hold it in your hand." Charlie Duke, who was on Apollo 16, spoke of the blackness of space like it was a texture. He said the blackness was so intense. Al Wharton, also on Apollo 15, said that Earth was an enormous sphere, that it looked phenomenal, that he could see oceans, clouds, and the oceans were a seemingly bottomless blue. The brightness and intensity, something photos cannot capture. The horizon was paper thin. Earth looked very vulnerable in a way that I had never understood before. Now, this one is a favorite of mine. Gene Cernan, who walked on the moon on Apollo 17, said, "One result of space travel was that I had become much more philosophical, at times unable to focus on minor problems back here on Earth because they just seemed small. My fellow astronauts who went to the moon encountered varying degrees of the same thing. We broke the familiar matrix of life." And what that means is when he came back from the moon, he had seen things. He had seen Earth that small in the sky. He had seen the moon's surface. He'd been to another world. But when he got back to Earth, maybe things that would worry him before didn't worry him so much anymore. Alan Bean, who walked on the moon in Apollo 12, said something very similar. He said that he liked to go to shopping malls, get an ice cream cone or something, and just sit and watch the people go by. He'd think to himself how lucky he was to have Earth, and how lucky that he was that there were people. He didn't mind so much about traffic on the motorways anymore. He was happy there were people around. So now imagine a future where more of us, where more people, get to see that view and feel those feelings. Maybe we'd be able to face our problems on Earth with a bit more perspective, and to understand where we are in space, and to understand that Earth is one place in the universe, and that there are other places too. But for the moment, we need Earth, and we need each other. That is a beautiful legacy of the Apollo program, and it's a beautiful legacy that all started with Earthrise in 1968.